Welcome to our panel today, B202, Building Streaming Workflows through K-12 and Higher Education. We're going to be talking today about some of the topics that we think are on many folks' minds, certainly on our panelists' minds. Everything from live streaming across a campus or multiple campuses to internal streaming, user-generated content, teacher-generated content for flipped classroom, video communications technologies used in these processes, all those things that are based around streaming delivery of the content, whether it be live or on demand. So we'll kick right off on that. One of the things we'd like to do, I'll mention right up front, is we'd like to make this conversational. If you're here because you have specific questions that you're trying to get answered, please feel free to ask those questions of us, and we'll try to address them as we go through. But we have a number of questions, and then the panelists are going to try and answer those, and hopefully they will align with some of the things that you're looking to do as well. But at any time, feel free to raise a hand or shout out if you have a question. We'll get you to ask it briefly, and then we'll repeat it, and so we capture it for the cameras, and then we'll try to answer it as best we can. So let's get started with introductions. My name is Chris Knowlton. I work with Wowza Media Systems, and I'll be the moderator today. John?
My name is Jonathan Schwartz. I'm the Director of Video Productions and Operations at USC Sol Price School of Public Policy.
I'm Todd Stabley with Duke University, and I work for a group called the Office of Information Technology, which is Duke's central IT shop in a wing of that called Media Technologies, which is responsible for various video and digital media services for Central Campus.
I'm Nicholas Barrios. I'm the media specialist for Argo Community High School, so I handle all their streaming services, live events, and video on demand.
Gary San Angel with the Keck School of Medicine, distance education specialist.
Great, thank you, and thanks for being here. All right. So what we're going to do is just jump right in with a bunch of questions. Again, if you have questions along the way, please feel free to engage with us and let us know what those questions are. But before we do that, let me just ask you a few questions, because we want to know a little bit more about you and have a better idea of how to maybe answer some of our questions with you in mind. So how many of you today, by show of hands, are in fact working with an educational institution? With or for? All right, everybody on this side of the room, basically. Okay, very good, thank you. Which would be about, what, 25 people? Okay, good. Let's see, how many of you are using streaming today already in your current role? All right. Another large contingent there, excellent, thank you. How many of you are delivering live lectures via streaming? About 4 hands up, okay. How many of you are supporting flipped classroom video delivery? 2, okay. And how many of you are supporting web conferencing as part of delivering courses to students? All right, 2 more, excellent. Thank you very much. All right, well, let's turn the questions over to the panel now. So for each of you, could you briefly describe the streaming media usage scenarios that you work with in your role and the high-level goals that sort of guide your streaming plans on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis? John, let's start with you.
Sure. So, well, my department, we're responsible for promoting the school through digital video. So we kind of focus on 3 main categories. One is marketing and recruitment. So this is things like faculty bios, research centers, student testimonials. A lot of that is offline generated content that we then stream out through various delivery platforms. Another one would be, of course, event capture, which depending on the event would be streamed or not streamed. And then we do, of course, online learning and video conferencing for our distance students. So it's kind of the 3 the goals. And I think our high-level goal moving forward would be to try to further increase our brand, strengthen our brand through video production, as well as to integrate the distance students as much as possible onto the on-campus culture. Because what we're seeing a lot of is that the distance students really want to be more involved in the seminars and conferences they can't go to. So how to make those people more integrated. And then, of course, just furthering our brand and making sure people know what the school does and who our faculty are in that kind of element.
Great, okay, thanks.
Cool. Chris, could you show my first slide?
Sure.
We'll do that next.
We've got, I would say, 4 workflows that I just wanted to highlight. The first is we have a pretty large central lecture capture initiative at Duke, and we've been doing that since 2005. That's a big piece of how we do streaming. That happens through appliances that are installed in about 120 classrooms. And we do a huge volume of recording, upwards of maybe 100 classes a day during the peak of the semester. So that's kind of one big piece. And the goal of that one is pure automation. I think the instructors need to be able to walk into a room, basically plug in and have what they're showing on the projector and video of them captured automatically, and end to end, it's just seamless for them. The second workflow is more of a kind of a self-service approach where they're using software, cameras and iOS devices to create video and need a place to publish it. And for that, primarily, we use a tool called Warpwire, which is a replacement for us. We used Kaltura previously. And we were looking for something that had what we call asset level security, where Kaltura didn't have that, where we wanted to be able to take these videos and have this be more of a publishing engine than kind of like a destination where you log into a single portal and have your stuff there. We wanted to be able to put all these videos in various systems, like you can see under the display section there, and have it preserve the integration with our identity management system. So we worked with this local company, local to Durham, and basically kind of built this from the ground up, and it's been kind of running for about 2 years now, and they've got interest in all sorts of other schools. I think Stanford's using it, and Yale, so it's getting pretty popular, and we're real excited with how that's going. So that's kind of how we handle the on-demand publishing piece. And then we have live streaming and kind of various ways that we do that. Panopto is our lecture capture provider, and they do that for some of the courses. We use Wowza streaming server or media engine now. Sorry, I'm keeping up with your terms, Chris. But yeah, so that handles basically kind of like the catch-all for various events. And I wanted to mention we do a lot of IP camera streams from our Wowza server. That seems to be a really big niche for us. Duke Athletics did a big renovation recently of our Wallace Wade football stadium and Cameron indoor stadium. It had 7 cameras going for the duration of that, and we streamed over 1 petabyte of data, just I think mostly through that. We also have a presence on the coast for our marine lab, and they have 2 cameras. So we're seeing a lot of interest in IP camera streaming with Wowza. So the fourth one I don't have up here, but it's kind of like a bespoke media production and streaming service, and we do a lot with MOOCs now at Duke, massively open online courses. Online learning is just becoming bigger and bigger. And so in the past, we had faculty kind of help them create their own videos for these, but the production values weren't great. And so we've kind of switched to having a professional team of people actually produce this video for them. And that's kind of a newer initiative for us.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Nicholas?
For us, at the high school level, really the 2 main scenarios that we're dealing with are video on demand through our learning management system, which we use Canvas. So just preparing either if it's a captured lecture of a teacher or just supplemental video that students are going to watch at home to be prepared to discuss it the next day, excuse me, in class. And then also our live events. So anytime there's a sporting event, football is pretty big for live streaming, but then also concerts, graduation, things like that. And we really want to actually ramp up our live event streaming. We've got a performing arts center being built currently, hopefully to have it fully done next year. And basically anything that comes into the school in the performing arts center, we want to be live and accessible to anyone. And really the goal behind that is we want our students to be fully prepared for post-secondary education, and we're noticing the trend that digital learning is what universities are turning to, and we want our students to have exposure to that before they get to the university level, so they're not trying to learn that while learning a new school and a whole new way of life. So,
Great, thanks.
Great. Chris, can you bring up the first slide?
Sure.
So I'm on the other side of the campus from where John is on the main campus. I run the Soto Studio, which is a green screen, flexible recording studio. A lot of it's structured around Wirecast, and it gives us the ability to basically be as super flexible as possible, be in studio or for our events. In our studio recordings, we do mainly sort of a new style of a presentation with slides and content, as well as giving the professor the ability to design the kind of recordings that they want. So we could do neurological exams, interviews, We could do chalk talks. We have a smart podium, and they can immediately just go old school and start to do things without any slides. So the idea with this model is to basically do two things. One, in the flipped classroom approach, provide classroom recordings that the students can view before coming to class, and so that class time is really used wisely and interactively. If we go to the next slide, Chris, we can kind of see sort of the distribution of how we send things out. So in terms of video on demand, we use Vimeo. We use primarily the portfolios and the review pages because we're also a service center that services other distance education programs at the Health Sciences campus. So we need to send out high quality recordings to them, get the ability to get feedback very quickly. All our courses go on Blackboard and Moodle, which Pearson runs for our MPH Online program. And then we also have our WordPress open courses, which we embed a lot of our content. As far as live streaming is concerned, some interesting things that we do. We're a media site group, and so all of Keck uses MediaSite, and so we do a lot of mock grant reviews, live between other campuses, and we record those. And everything is much more gravitating to online collaboration, either through Adobe Connect or Cisco WebEx. And then we can also still use the studio to basically record that, capture that into through Wirecast and put it on demand or send it through YouTube as a backup to MediaSite. So that's kind of a trajectory of what we do in the delivery aspect.
All right, thanks very much. So we have a number of slides from each of the panelists, and we didn't cover them all. In that, we sort of combined a couple of questions there, I think. So maybe what I ought to do is go back and ask those of you who haven't gone through all your slides to do so. So maybe, Jonathan, I'll come back to you and ask you to just dive in a little bit more detail about some of those things that you outlined initially.
Sure. So I think we pretty much have three primary models of way we deliver content. The first one is the very typical offline production workflow model. For marketing campaigns, for promotional videos, we'll basically shoot the content on various cameras. We'll have sound through a recorder, lavaliers. We'll input that footage depending on what we're shooting on into Premiere and Avid, transcode out through Adobe Media Encoder, get an MP4 output. This is pretty standard. I'm sure most of you guys are doing this to some degree already. And then output that media into one of our online platforms. So this is what we use more for the like I said, the promotional marketing campaign, offline production. We control the entire process from end to end. Notice down there, our current main distribution model is YouTube. iTunes U is a little low there because we're starting to deprecate that. We find that it's not really very useful for this kind of content. We were using Vimeo, kind of like Keck a lot. But we're now moving to Wistia for better analytics and for better control, seeing what people are watching, where they're dropping off, that kind of thing. And then occasionally, if it's appropriate, we'll put it into the LMS system. So this is the offline production workflow where we have control from end to end.
With Wistia, and all that, as I recall, it also allows you to put in call to actions right in the video,
Correct,
or right over the video. Do you find that you get some pretty good response rates that way?
So it's funny you mention that. We're just starting to do that now, and we actually are. We're using Wistia for delivery into Facebook and Twitter, as well as our own website. And we're making a slow push to move all of our static content to that specifically for the call to actions and the turnstile, gathering email addresses or having someone click here. So I can't really speak to how well we're doing, how it builds yet. But so far, we just released one video, and so far we saw a pretty high conversion rate. I don't have the exact statistics, but we saw a pretty high conversion rate. And our marketing team and communication office is very excited about that. And so we're actually, as a result of that, tailoring content now for social media. So before, we just throw everything up on YouTube, and our content team would just embed that into whatever social platform we do. Now, because Wistia has that advanced ability, we will actually create separate content for social media. So for example, when we create a Facebook video, we'll actually burn in the captions because, of course, you scroll through Facebook with no sound, and people can't really see what the video is about. So now we'll actually embed the caption and then throw that to Wistia so we can see both aspects of it.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
So we're customizing the content for that. The second way is kind of speaking more to a lot of my colleagues here do distance learning. This is pretty much just a standard webcam or a camera with either using VoIP or using a Polycom. We'll insert that into either Zoom or Adobe Connect. We were MediaSite primarily, like the Keck School. We've deprecated that quite a bit, specifically because we've noticed that one big challenge we're seeing is we can no longer have the comfort of having a distance learning room. There cannot be a room that is set up primarily for distance learning with all the right cameras and the MediaSite and da-da-da. We're seeing that people want to be portable. We're being asked to do lectures or video conferences in any room, anywhere on campus. So we're moving to a much more portable model where we actually have a little cart we built. It has webcam. It goes into a laptop. That becomes the host, and we can do a video conference and/or a class anywhere on campus. So we're moving away from the more static stuff, and we found MediaSite just too expensive to do that. I mean, $20,000 for a stationary product was just a little hard. So we're building more of these mobile kits, and then we'll record those lectures, and then we'll put those lectures into the LMS system as a link for people to utilize. So this is more a distance learning model. And this also gives us the flexibility of doing the flipped classroom model as well. So our faculty on their own can record their elements with using a webcam or whatever, insert it into the LMS, and then that way this becomes more of just the actual engaging, because we're seeing much more of the flipped classroom model nowadays.
Okay.
And then our last one I'll take through quick is more of the live streaming one for those of you who are interested in live streaming. In this one, we basically have our cameras. We have moved away, actually, ironically, we were Wirecast. We moved away from Wirecast. We went to the new TriCaster, which I highly recommend. They've got a great educational package where it comes with a switcher for a very inexpensive price point for education. So we put all of our cameras into the TriCaster. We then stream that out to Ustream as a 720p stream. And then the TriCaster has the ability to also feed any overflow, TV or projector for doing like image magnification or a large scale event where we actually need to feed an overflow room, so on and so forth. It can actually output a program stream, and then we'll stream live to Ustream. The great thing about the TriCaster, which I love, is we can actually record fully HD switched masters. Meaning, so when the event's over, we have the switched version, have our multiple cameras, 1, 2, 3, and we also have the individual recordings completely synced up of all the individual cameras. So we can either push the final switched version from Ustream right to YouTube or Wistia or the LMS, or we can go right into Adobe Premiere with all of our cameras pre-recorded, our switch master, make any mistakes we made in live in case I might have hit the wrong button, and then take that final product and pump it out as well. So that we have the ability to go live stream and then very quickly do an edit if we need to change something or pull something out, something was kind of sensitive, and then push that very quickly as well. So it gives us the ability to be streaming as well as an HD mastering system right afterwards. And those are kind of our three main workflows.
Very cool. Okay, thanks. Todd, I think you also had a second slide. Did you want to jump into that one too?
Sure, yeah, that's specific to WarpWire, just kind of showing the workflow there of how you'd take a video that you had created through whatever mechanism you want to use to record it. This is the main interface on the left for WarpWire. It's responsive design. It's the same interface for iOS as for desktop. So you would basically have a collection of videos called a media library. And those are represented here. We're in one particular library, and you can play the video from within there. But as I mentioned, the whole idea is that you can take this video and export it into any of the other tools that we use at Duke. So the way that works is you basically click on the little ellipsis next to the particular video, and you can do this also for the whole library. Click Share, and then that will grab you a link, standard embed code, or a straight link to that content. And then you just kind of pop that into whatever system that you want to publish it into. And as I mentioned, it'll preserve those access rights, wherever it is. And the idea of this, and I guess I didn't answer before what our overall goals are for all this stuff, is really just to make this really super easy for anyone to use. And that's kind of what we think WarpWire succeeds at. The idea that anyone with a DukeNet ID can log into this site and just start using it. There's no account setup that's needed by a system administrator. We have that right now with Panopto, our lecture capture service, but they're actually also taking a cue on that and moving toward building a sandbox, and the release we're installing in December is going to make it also possible for anyone with a DukeNet ID just to log into the system and start doing stuff. So I'm just trying to get out of the way.
Right. Nice. Okay. Nicholas, shall we do yours?
Yeah.
I'm going the wrong way though, aren't I? Yeah. Yes, I am. There we go.
So, as I said before, we've got kind of two main streaming setups. So this would be more the video on demand or the flipped classroom setup that we have. We've got a few cameras that we would either record lecture, which John, I'm going to probably ask you for a little more information on your mobile setup that you've got going on, because that's high demand right now. Or if there's content that we're not creating ourselves, maybe there's a clip of a video that a teacher wants. We're capturing that through a Blackmagic card and then editing everything in Final Cut. And then we purchased Kaltura as a service to help us, one, integrate into Canvas, and really the main drive behind that was we wanted something that's going to give us automatic adaptive bit rates, because we know that our students may not necessarily have the best technology or the bandwidth at home, and we want to reach them wherever we can. So if that is their mobile device, on a cellular network, we want to make sure everyone's having the same experience across the board. And then that goes out from Kaltura to either, if we want it password protected, we want it behind something, it's going to go into Canvas where teachers can share it with their students, or we'll put it on our website, or Kaltura also provides what's called Media Space, which is almost a personally branded YouTube for our students.
Okay.
So that's for video on demand. And then with live streaming, which I think is the next slide, pretty similar. We're using a Teradek cube to encode everything, and then that's going again directly to Kaltura, and then from there we are pushing it out. If it's a football game, it's probably going to go to High School Cube, which is now I think just the cube. They may have dropped the high school from it recently. Yeah. Or on our website or Media Space again for people to find.
Cool, great, thank you. And was there more that you wanted to get into, Gary? I think we covered your slides.
One thought in response to what John was saying with MediaSite. MediaSite is expensive. It's like one of the Cadillacs of lecture capture, and it's such a challenge. When you're with a company for a long time, and then how do you switch over to like Panopto or other places. So one of the things that we're looking at is other opportunities. Some of the things that people are sharing is really great. I'd love to talk more. I know that MediaSite has Catch, which will allow the ability for a user to record a lecture without a device. So that's something that's supposed to be in the works with MediaSite 7. So we'll see. But we're very open to better models, basically.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Let's move on to the next bit here. Oh, thank you. Right, okay, so the next thing that we were going to talk about was whether or not the video workflows that you have today are simpler, more transparent, more accessible for whoever's using them, whether it be the students or the teachers, than perhaps they have been in the past. Because I think I've heard a couple of you mention, and I think Todd, you specifically called out, you'd like to make things simpler for folks to use so that it's more accessible. So can you each tell me a little bit about, are things simpler now than they used to be, and where do you see it going? Let's start with you, Gary.
Well, definitely one of the ways that we have utilized the studio is to focus on a high quality presentation and not have to worry about people kind of doing it on their own, because in our experience, what we realized is that people are still challenged. We still have to find, support, to help them, do these recordings on their own, even if they had web camera, that sort of thing. So the idea of guided assistance and in a really professional context really has honed our quality a bit more, and so. My thinking is really you need to have that kind of guided recording to really have something that's going to be effective. You know, you need to have that instructional designer there to assist that lecturer, because they're going to record a 2-hour lecture as if they were doing a live lecture, and you don't want to do that within an online context. You want to chunk that out. You want to make sure that this is something that people are going to watch. So that's kind of our approach.
What's the typical, when you talk like a 2-hour lecture, what does that typically get chunked into? How many pieces or how many sound bites, or how do you look at it?
Yeah, so what we try to do from an instructional design standpoint is really say, okay, we don't want anything longer than 8 minutes a segment. And each one of those have to build up to the larger core of that particular topic. And so everything is very deliberate and topic related, so they all feed into each other. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes to really get that recording as fine-tuned as we can.
So you'll have at least, following that sort of methodology, at least 15, for a 2-hour lecture, you have at least 15 segments.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
But we're finding our stats are much better because everybody gets lost. In a 45-minute lecture, they go, oh my God, where is that? And they're having to look for it. Even in MediaSite, if you can plug in, the content for that slide, it's still a challenge. So really chunking it, making it smaller is something that I highly recommend folks do.
Great.
Is 8 minutes arbitrary number, or is there any sort of analytic behind why you went with 8 minutes?
I think we ultimately wanted to get less than 10, and so that was the compromise, was like 8.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
This is highlighting kind of an interesting tension for us. So at Duke, we've been trying to get away, I think, in some ways from this term lecture capture, but it's kind of stubbornly persistent. The fact is we have some really nice rooms at Duke, rooms that I wish I had when I was a student. And we have people standing in front of those rooms talking and delivering great lectures, and that's kind of how we do a lot of what we do. And so a lot of what we do is lecture capture. But at the same time, there are a lot of initiatives that kind of challenge that and kind of forcing instructors to kind of think about what is most valuable and what actually needs to be delivered that way. We do a lot of stuff in partnership with our Center for Instructional Technology, looking at flipping the class and how you can kind of create a series of short modules. And then my group is definitely interested in finding tools to kind of help facilitate that. But it is an interesting tension. I think we do record a lot of 2-hour and 3-hour even classes, and we don't try to break those up. I mean, those are just delivered to the students because that's part of our demand right now.
Mm-hmm. And building on that, if I can, I think what we're seeing that's very interesting is that taking that tension is this thing between instructional design and the live process. So instructional design is its own little animal, right? How do you create a course that is concise? Do you chunk it up? Do you not chunk it up? Do you do the 8-minute thing? And that's something we're still struggling with, how to develop a really effective online course. But that's instructional design, and that I think is always going to involve, at least currently, a support team, instructional designer, someone who can work with the professor, tone down their content, create optimized content, so on and so forth. But the other part of the issue is how the video workflow for the live portion. When the professor is actually in a room and doing a live conference, and what we're finding is that the technology is easier. I mean, Zoom and Adobe, Zoom is fantastic. Adobe Connect is still a little rough around the edges. And it's gotten a lot easier for a professor to do it, to actually host the seminar, and the students are a little more pro. But you still have issues like, is your microphone muted? Is your, are you using VoIP versus phone? So you still have, those issues are still prevalent, which gives a very negative connotation to the whole idea of doing a class online. And if a professor is going to do a flipped classroom model without the assistance of an instructional designer or their own thing, they can sit in front of their webcam and record it, but then you're talking about quality level, and is it effective? Is it, or are they just doing their lecture in their classroom in front of a small computer? And most of them don't have the ability to edit that content. So I think overall the technology of the live stuff is gotten a lot easier, and professors are much more comfortable doing live lecture over some kind of technology. But designing the instructional design course, that's still a very big challenge, I think. Designing the whole experience and the flipped classroom model is still a very big challenge.
Okay. Very good. Any other thoughts on that? Any other questions from the audience? You're all being very quiet. Okay, fair enough. Go ahead, please.
In your simpler setup, with the laptop and part, is it really as simple as just 2 cameras connected to USB and that's it? Or
Yeah, actually, it's really simple. We just have a cart and we have a laptop. We have a camera connected to it. Depending on the camera or the cart, sometimes we'll use a Blackmagic capture card like you do. Sometimes we'll just use a USB thing. We prefer the Blackmagic card because we can get a camera that has a zoom lens because a webcam, fixed lens. So just a camera connected right into a capture card into the laptop, and the laptop has a driver on it, sees it as a webcam. So the video conferencing software sees that camera with a zoom lens as just a typical webcam, and we pipe it into whatever software we want to use, whether it be a Zoom or Adobe Connect, and then we have the ability of doing. It's actually got a little mini Polycom for VoIP, or we can have a Polycom in the room that connects into the system. So yeah, it's just a camera that goes right into it. And we haven't started doing multi-cameras yet because I think that's what you asked, only because the system, the web conferencing software, at least to my knowledge, and I'd love to hear if anyone knows any differently, usually it only has only a driver for one input, right? Most Zoom or Adobe Connect only will allow you to see one webcam. I know Zoom's trying to expand that. Once they have the ability to have multiple webcams, in the video conference from one computer, then we can easily do that. It's just an extra capture card.
Oh, you're using Zoom, you're not using Wirecast.
Oh, I'm sorry, the portable kits? I see what you're saying. No, we can. We just usually, when it gets into multi-cameras for that, we'll bring in the TriCaster, we can use Wirecast to answer it. But for classrooms, we don't usually go that complex, I guess is the answer. But yes, for the more portable kit for in that kind of environment, yes, we would be a Wirecast or a TriCaster and multiple inputs, and yeah, it's pretty basic like that.
Okay.
About your use of the TriCaster, you said that not only do you have the switch version of your program, but you also have the raw as well. Is that because you're shooting on media cards, or are you doing that in the TriCaster?
Both, actually.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So the question was, in the TriCaster setup, the slides demonstrate that we had the ability to edit. After the event, we'd have the live switch version. We'd also have the raw footage. And the gentleman asked, is that because we're doing it all in the TriCaster or media cards? The answer is actually both. So the cameras are a backup recording onto the SD card just for backup purposes. The problem with that is that the camera records in its own codec, in its own wrapper, MXF, MOV, whatever, and it's not synced to the TriCaster version. So the TriCaster version, we actually set it up to record the switch master and then ISOs of each individual camera we throw into it. So at the end of the event, let's say it's an hour long, we will have 4 files. One will be an hour-long switch master, and one will be 3 one-hour individual ISOs of each camera, perfectly in sync time. So I can put them into any NLE and just start editing right away, and there's no sync point necessary because I can bounce between them. If something breaks in that process, the hard drive, I don't know, whatever happens to the TriCaster, we've never had it because we have a TriCaster. It happens a lot with Wirecast. We drop frames, we drop sync. TriCaster doesn't have that issue, but if it does, we have the camera capture cards to back up. The only challenge is you then have to sync it up afterwards and find that sync point, and possibly, depending on your NLE and your processing power of your system, have an issue going between TriCaster, I think, is an MPEG codec, and the camera is usually XD-Cam or ProRes or H.264, and having to edit in real time between very processor-intensive codecs, whereas MPEG-2 is pretty benign. I'm sorry? What was the question?
Lead time between in the class when it's available to the students. How long does that process take? Do you have do any kind of post-processing at all? You're just taking it and uploading it right away?
Are you talking about for an event or for a classroom setup? Okay, so to clarify, the question was, what's the lead time for post-production into classroom if we're doing class? For a class setup, we actually don't often do the TriCaster setup. For the class setup, it's much more the typical mobile cart, one camera that we just move around, zoom in, zoom out, so it's ready to go right afterwards. The multi-switch setup with the TriCaster is more for streaming an event. But to answer your question, if we need to do it for a class, then it would be a very high turnaround time, and what we would aim to do is make sure the switch is accurate on the start. So we put someone from the switch and go and switch it live on this time. And my guys are all from the industry, as I was, so they're pretty used to doing a multi-camera switch. But we don't tend to do that for a class. It's more for like a live event.
And for a live event, what's the turnaround time, just out of curiosity?
Oh, for live event, instantaneous usually. Usually the live stream is pretty good. We tend to make a concerted effort to put all of our branding and collateral into the TriCaster, so we basically have a complete switched event. At most, we might have had one minor mess up, or we want to put extra branding in, and because of the program master, we can just simply put that in NLE and transcode it. So usually we're up right away, and we'll push our live stream right from Ustream to YouTube, or if we want to do a little more brand tweaking, maybe an hour of tweaking the NLE, and then transcoding time of an hour, so we're up a couple hours later at most.
Okay, great. More questions. Gentleman in the back.
It seems like everyone, or all 4 of you, at some point download have been
So let me summarize the question. You're currently using Connect for interactivity. You're not real happy with it. You're wondering what these guys are using and why they would recommend something like Zoom, if I can summarize.
Sure.
So who wants to take that?
I know for us, WebEx works really well for sort of the video quality from a video conferencing standpoint in terms of an online collaborative venue. We really like it a lot. That the way that it sometimes Zoom gets a little challenged because if you have more than like 4 or 5, right, then you kind of have to move things over, and so and the architecture obviously is from Cisco, so we know like it's going to be robust. It's not going to fail us, and we haven't really had any issues. But in terms of quality of video, we do WebEx, and one interesting way that we do it is with Wirecast. I'll actually have two sessions, one where I can just get the video and then the other the slides, so I can bring them in and basically switch. And so it allows for a better broadcast recording of that online meeting.
Okay. And do you want to speak to your Zoom experience?
Basically, here's my trouble with Adobe Connect. Adobe Connect, I think, in my opinion, is the most feature-rich for interactive classroom. You have the best experience for being able to do sharing, and I think it's most feature-rich. It's also the most cumbersome, in my opinion, to use. And you're right, it's hard when you have to bring in distant students. The only reason why we're using Zoom, quite honestly, is that it's ridiculously easy. We have found that we went from supporting a high volume of issues with Adobe Connect technically on both the student and the professor end to virtually nothing with Zoom. I mean, it's really, really easy in that. Is it as feature-rich and easy? No, and I understand the point of using WebEx. We evaluated that too. And we're kind of torn because WebEx is great for some of that, but it's also very expensive and it's a different animal entirely. So we're still torn in that little situation where ease of use versus extra features. I think what we're finding is our flipped classroom models are loving Zoom. Our non-flipped classroom models are still very heavily Adobe Connect and have all the inherent issues that come with it.
Okay.
And then one added thing in terms of WebEx that many professors really like is that once you have that session, they can easily send it off to other students. It will automatically record. So our issues in terms of trying to deal with just kind of day-to-day, helps tech support for has really gone down because they're used to it now, and it's really great for them to get a downloaded quality of the recording, as well as sending those links out on their own.
Okay. I saw a couple other hands. Yes, sir.
One simple question for all of you guys. How many personnel staff members are you using to produce your simplest video when you want to produce a video for a classroom or anything like that? How many people are
How many people are
involved?
involved when you're creating a video for any of these events, a classroom or a lecture or what have you?
I guess I'll start. So for classroom support, for classrooms, we actually do not have an instructional designer currently. So for the classroom side, there is one full-time person and a couple part-time students who report to the distance learning director, and she maintains all the support for creating that. There is talk, for a variety of reasons. We have an online provider who does our online school programs like Embanet and Pearson that we're not very happy with them. So we're bringing that in-house, and if that succeeds going forward, we'll probably have a dedicated one person, maybe two, dedicated creating content with the instructional designer for the classroom side, if that helps you. On the non-classroom side, like the events and production staff, I'm very lucky. My team is bigger than most. I have 2 full-time employees that report to me and 4 part-time students. And then whoever they will hire on the classroom side will kind of do a pseudo-direct report to me.
Okay. Any other?
Ours is pretty similar. We have an instructional design team that is with our Center for Instructional Technology that will connect with the professor who's doing a course. And then there's a team of 3 video editors who kind of basically shoot and produce the finished work.
Okay.
It's me. Yeah,
Right. There you go.
so being a high school, I mean I do everything from switching bulbs and projectors to having to set all of this up. I've got a few good student aides that will help out, and other counterparts in the technology department that, in a pinch, can help out, but it's mostly just me doing it. Anything that's lecture capture, the teachers are doing on their own, which is one of the nice things about having Kaltura directly into Canvas, is that it is pretty simple for them to click a button and create their own content. Right now it is off of a laptop camera, so which is why we're looking into some mobile solutions like John was talking about, but other than that, for events and everything, it's me.
Yeah, I mean, that's very similar in my case too. Unfortunately, because USC is a very federated model, that even within our own school, everybody's running these rogue distance education programs, everybody's running their own shop. And so, really, like the IT person is who does networking, is helping to do recording classrooms. I mean, I've come from Penn and Drexel, which was much more, centralized, and it's been a real challenge. So I can definitely speak to the centralized experience as well as the federated experience. And really, when you're doing it on your own, it's a big challenge. The only thing I can say is, kudos, to John and Todd and you guys all, you can define and redefine like how you're wanting to make things happen for your students and your faculty, and because there is no one's telling you what to do.
And building that, one thing I'd highly recommend to you, just because it's an excellent point, is that what I found very useful was drawing a line in the sand between what is promoting, marketing, recruitment, event content that is for your school overall and what's for your classroom content, because it's hard to do both, and you can't be an expert in both, and you almost need an instructional designer full-time to do the classroom stuff. So I drew a line in the sand, and I have the instructional designers work on the classroom content, we work on this stuff, and then I aid technically, because it's a different world, from a content perspective. So just if that helps.
Just ask me if you can say it one more time, that you do just the classroom stuff and you have someone else do the promotional.
No, sorry. So I'm in charge of video productions and operations overall. So my team, we will create and manage the content for all events, promotion and marketing materials, high-profile events, web streaming, commencement, that kind of stuff. We will work with the distance learning department in creating content for their class if need be. So they have an instructional designer, and they will assist the faculty from using Zoom, Adobe Connect. We come in when they have technical issues, or in helping them create that content when it's already been designed instructionally.
So on that, what were some of the problems or difficulties you ran into with getting the instructors? You guys are using, one of you is using Kaltura, the other one using Zoom, getting the instructors to do their own recording. Some of the challenges, I mean, and I'm not exaggerating, we have teachers, we have to teach them how to use a mouse.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting challenge. I think the question is how do you get professors to do it? We have a mix. We have a few core professors, thankfully, to be honest, are a little younger, and they're very comfortable doing their own stuff. And we set them up with a little camera and give them a little tutorial and show them how to use Camtasia, something basic, and they'll go to town and create their own content. For the more established senior faculty, that's an issue for us. And we have not yet bridged that gap completely. What it comes down to is having a full-time instructional designer work with them, and we don't have that yet. Our instructional designer is also the tech support for the video conferencing, the Zoom, that kind of stuff. So, but I think what we're seeing is that as long as we can make it a pleasurable experience for them, they're open to it. And to speak to that, one thing we're in the process of trying to get funded is similar to what I think you're doing over at Duke, is an automated lecture capture system. So, but a little more than like your typical media site or Kaltura or media site, or we're actually going to build a little studio where a professor can walk in and hit a button, and everything will come on, the lights, the camera, everything, record it, and then hit a button, close it. we're trying to build that now because I think when that happens, it'll be easier because right now we have to chase down faculty. That's our next goal.
And for us, it basically lands on the teacher's shoulder. So if they don't do it, it won't get done. So they have that incentive where if they want a digital aspects to their course, they are going to have to do it themselves, which is why we are looking for ways to make it as simple as possible for them. We do have a few good administration and department chairs who are a lot more tech savvy, and they're pushing this initiative because right now we have about a third of our courses are designed with digital curriculum in mind, and we want to have that 100% of our courses within the next 3 years because we are rolling out a one-to-one program for our students, so every student will have a device. Right now we're using service tablets, but they'll have that ability to interact, and so in order for it to work, we need to have our courses have a digital component with it. So that's our take on it.
In the past, we've had a lot of promotional efforts designed to try to get faculty, encourage them to use it, training and workshops. But I think one thing we're seeing now is there's a little bit of a peer pressure factor. I think as more and more faculty do it, it's becoming harder and harder for those other ones to keep resisting. So I think over time we're seeing that it's not as hard to get people to do it.
Right.
But I think the reality, I mean, for us in School of Medicine, you're talking about, doctors and people who really think that they are God sometimes. So, and that goes for all our faculty. So, really, which is one of the reasons why we chose sort of the model of this studio because you have this space where you can just kind of cater them in and kind of get them all set up, record it, where they don't have to worry about it, do it right, and then they leave. Obviously, live is a different beast in itself for events and regular day-to-day classroom. But from an online standpoint, that is definitely what I would recommend and push. Because our studio was funded from the National Institute of Health through a grant, we within the next couple weeks will have sort of the workflow of our setup, and it'll be available for people to download on our site, which is sotostudio.usc.edu.
I thought I saw another hand, 2 hands. All right, let's start with you, sir, in the back there.
Yeah, have any of you experimented with 360-degree video? And if so, in what scenarios, like lecture capture and capture? And is there any benefit here for me to doing that?
Who wants to answer that? Have any of you experimented with 360-degree video for events or lecture capture or anything, and what are the advantages to doing so?
We've definitely experimented with, we've got kind of another wing of my overall group, which is called Academic Services, that is just charged with exploring things like virtual reality and augmented reality, and they've been playing a little bit with that. I'm sorry that I can't speak to specific things that they've done, but it's definitely something that's very much of interest and something that we'll continue to, I think, be looking to technologies like that for our future, inspiration and where we're going to be headed next. But certainly something to be definitely aware of and continue to look.
And there are a couple sessions, I think, yet this afternoon on VR.
Yeah.
So there may be other resources of information for you. Sir, you had a question as well.
I wonder if y'all had any input on captioning. Y'all can do it on demand.
Right.
How do you handle that whole aspect?
So how do you handle live and on-demand captioning?
Just talking about this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to take it?
We've done a lot with captioning. It's been definitely a huge issue for us now that you probably heard there was a lawsuit with Harvard and MIT. So that's kind of driving a lot of interest in it. The way that it works now is that we basically have built in processes to work with external vendors to do captioning as it's needed. There's not been a blanket policy come down to say, as I mentioned, we do a lot of lecture recording, and no one's told us at this point you have to caption all of that, and it would be $1 million to do that. So. But it's certainly something that we're going to continue to monitor the need, from the legal standpoint, and then also just making it easy. A lot of innovation in the captioning space. When we started, there were really kind of 1 or 2 options that were very expensive, and now we're seeing $1 a minute. Rev.com had some great results with them. So being able to kind of have processes and documentation for how you can integrate a caption with WarpWire, with Panopta, that's kind of how we've handled it up until now.
And building that, we're the same way. We use Rev.com exclusively. They're fantastic. Rev.com.
rev.com?
rev.com.
Okay.
We only do not use them when we need rush service. Then we'll go to a more traditional Hollywood vendor, and then because they don't guarantee 24 hours yet, they're working on it. And the same thing, we will do it for marketing campaigns, promotional videos, those kind of things, but we don't do a blanket policy. If it's requested by a research center for video, we do it. Eventually, we know it's probably coming, but so far, it's the cost factor. I mean, you do 2 hours of for a whole online program. How do you capture all that? But yeah, we're aware of it. It's just not something marketing and promotional videos where we currently use it, I think, is the best play.
If there's any folks in the Cal State system, there is some funding because it is very costly. So you can look for it online, and that's something that we saw in research. Unfortunately, we can't tap into it, but for CSUs, you can.
Have any of you looked at, there are automated captioning services becoming available. I think Google has something now where they will do machine-based captioning, and it's supposed to become, supposedly 85% accurate, something like that. So it seems like that's getting better. Have any of you looked into that yet?
So CalStar actually offers a similar service
Okay.
with our package that we got. The problem with that is we're seeing it's not ADA compliant still.
Oh, I see.
Because it is machine done, I don't think the accuracy is there enough for the ADA to say, yes, that's okay to use it.
Okay.
I actually am curious to know your experience with Panopto, because they were one of the services we were looking at, and one of the things that interested me was their in-video searching, because I know they're doing something on their back end to at least caption it for metadata, so I don't know where they're going in terms of actually providing those captions.
Definitely one of the benefits of Panopto. They've got a great search platform, and part of that, as you mentioned, is based on they do optical character recognition on all the content, so any word that appears there is going to get indexed and searchable. They have an option for automated speech recognition also that you can kind of turn on selectively. Where we found is that isn't at a quality level, that we could actually produce those on the front end. And in fact, I think that was a point of the lawsuit, the MIT lawsuit, was that they had actually been captioned, but it was the YouTube automated captions, which were not ADA compliant. But we do have some interest in machine transcription. Our library recently worked with a vendor called Pop-Up Archive, which is kind of in that tier of the 85% threshold, and they're kind of adding on a workflow after that to have grad students review those and kind of make corrections to kind of bump it up to the next level. So that's certainly a viable workflow and something that you can consider.
Okay, great. I thought I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
Do any of you capture on-screen annotations, and if so, what works for that?
Do any of you capture on-screen annotations, and if so,
For
what
sure.
works for that?
Smart Podium works really well. It's older, technology, and obviously now with the new Microsoft Surface Pro that just came out just a few days ago, that looks pretty exciting. And also the Jambox from Google, we're looking into that as well. I think it's like $6,000 or something like that. But right now we're using a Smart Podium to do all annotations, and it works well for us.
So my business told me Smart Podium is going away.
Really?
Smart Podium's going away.
Discontinued, Smart Podium software.
Wow.
Yeah,
Good.
I thought I'd heard
Good to
something
know.
like that as well. Okay.
Thanks.
It helps one
That
thing
would explain some delays I have on some smart boards.
One thing we've also done with on-screen annotations is if we're in a live switch environment, if we're using that switch model we showed you, both Wirecast and NewTek have a client that can go onto a machine and just take whatever they're doing on that machine, whether it be a Surface or a normal machine, and shunt it to your switcher as a video signal. So that way you can treat it like a switch. Camera 1, camera 2, and camera 2 is your...
This is desktop presenter.
Exactly,
Right.
sorry, yeah.
Right.
And that works out, really well. It's not the same as them, it's not the same as a true Smart Podium, but it works out just the same end result for those kind of environments.
Great. Was there another hand over on the side? No. Okay. Yes, sir.
Take it back one more time. So, some of us work in the prison system,
Uh-huh.
under the education department. Can you take it back and just explain the role of an instructional designer in video production?
Can you explain the role of an instructional designer in video production?
Sure. So it's a good question because that's actually the model we're going to. for my, I don't know what I guess the definition varies depending on who you talk to, but in my opinion, instructional designer is someone who's going to work with the faculty member and design the course in a way that is amenable and efficient for an online student. Whether you're doing the 8-minute gap, whether you're doing, what kind of material you're presenting, and also making that material engaging and appropriate for an online space, not just someone sitting in front of a camera and going and lecturing like this, having some sort of interactivity to it, and design the entire course that it works well in the online space. Now, in relation to video production, it depends on where you're at. Our instructional designer is not qualified to help with the video production aspect. So the model we are moving to is there will be a full-time instructional designer we're going to hopefully hire soon when we move away from Embanet and Pearson to work with the faculty member to design the content. And that person also has some degree of understanding of the material to some degree, or at least how to talk to a faculty member. They do this, they're the experts in their field, right? Talk to the faculty member in a way they're not going to feel like they're trying to interpret their content for them. But design that content, design the steps, the lesson plans, the segment breaks, the material they're going to present, and then that instructional designer would work with, at least in our model, a video production person who will help create that content and assist the faculty member from the technical ends of creating that content, whether they go into a studio, whether they do it at home, whether they do it in a controlled environment, whatever the case may be. So that's how we break it out. Some schools or one-man bands, the instructional designer can do all of that, but we find that instructional designers tend to be very much on the academic side, lean with a very technical bent, and they don't understand the quality level that's required to make that stuff look good in an online environment, if that helps.
Yeah, in my role, I basically do both, just because we don't have the resources. So, I mean, obviously, I know Price also is working with Pearson, and they have their own team of instructional designers who work with our faculty. But really, aside from that program, it's really just me. So, part of that is being able to, because I come from an education background, know like what is needed, simplicity above all, and impact, and that's that's really the two bottom lines that that any good instructional designer is going to provide you.
Absolutely. Great. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. We would love to have your feedback on what you thought, whether you learned something or not. We actually want to know either way so that we can improve. We'd love to have, although unfortunately the survey forms only give you numbers to circle, if you want to jot down notes about what could be better or what you'd like to see next time, we'd love to hear that, because we take not only how many people are in the room as an indicator of success, but what those surveys tell us that we could do better for next time, so we know whether to have something like this again at the next show. So thank you very much for coming. Thanks to our panelists for sharing their experience.